Morning, everyone. Of a lot of things that I like about Product Management Festival this time, one of the things is the 80s music that they have been playing since yesterday. And me, Rich, Simonetta, and Felicity, we have been vibing to this music, and we are really enjoying having fun in this music. Um, so my name is Sailendra Kumar, and I'm a VP of Product at Back Market. And Simonetta, thanks for the introduction. Um, Back Market is a global e-commerce leader for refurbished electronics based out of France, and I'm based out of London. I started my career as an engineer way back in 2007, 18 years back. Worked with companies like Philips and then with Siemens, and then did my MBA and then moved on to a product career path. Worked with companies like Indeed and Make My Trip, which is one of the largest online travel companies in India. And then finally moving on to Back Market, where I lead a vast portion of the product. Now, what I will do today is I will talk about a transformation story. Now, this is not just any transformation story. We are talking here about how did I, along with my team members, cross-functional team members, went ahead and transformed a payments team from a very feature-driven delivery style team to a team which thinks about business, impact, and the user. And the case study here will mention a previous company that I worked into is actually a online travel company, something very similar to a booking.com or a Skyscanner or an Expedia. So let's dive in. So this year is 2018, and I was leading the consumer product side of this business, and I was moved to lead the consumer payment side of the business, asked by my CPO. And he said, hey, Sailendra, we need you there, and we need to lift this team. This is something that's not working. Now, to give you a bit of context, what is this payments product that I'm talking about? Now, imagine all of you are trying to book a ticket from booking.com. So you select your room, or you go ahead and look into a payment page. Depending upon which country you are, you will see a set of payment methods, like 4 payment method, 5 payment method. And then finally, you enter your payment details, and then you click Pay Now, and then it goes ahead and completes the transaction. On the face, it looks very simple, right? There are 5 payment methods. I just entered my credit card details, I used my Apple Pay, and it's done. However, if you go deep inside this surface layer, you see there is a whole lot of things going on. Means there is a whole bunch of payment system integration. There is an integration with someone like an Adyen, someone like a Checkit.com. And then there is an orchestration layer in between, which decides that, hey, based on this user, based on this transaction, based on this country, where should this payment be going? Which payment provider should get this payment? And it's not just that. End of the day, you also want to ensure that there is no fraud in the system. Basically, there is a credit card which is genuine. The user who is making the transaction is a genuine user, genuine holder of the credit card. So you have the whole bunch of fraud chargeback systems in place. And finally, there's a whole bunch of user experience that is also involved, right? So there is a user who is trying to make a payment, and then if the user doesn't like this hotel, they also cancel this hotel, and there is a whole refund experience. So a lot of times you would be relating with this, that you cancel a transaction and you don't get a refund for next 2 days, everyone starts to panic. Hey, what happened about my refund? Where is my money? Are they going to take my money? Are they going to give me my money back? So that's the ecosystem that I'm talking about, the product that I'm talking about. Now, what is the driver of this change? The driver of this change primarily came from the investor side of things. So one of the goals, one of the words that I heard a lot that time, hey, we have to improve on our unit economics. Now, what does a unit economic mean in business parlance? It's very simple. For every dollar that you're investing, how much you are getting back in the business. So that's a very simple term, and it directly relates to profitability that Simonetta was talking about. So there was a core investor push that we need to get profitable. This was not a profitable company at that time, which also means that you need to improve your revenue levers, improve your margins, and then on the bottom side of the P&L, how do you go ahead and reduce the cost that you're incurring in running the business? So the first thing that I did was to do a listening tour with different stakeholders, with executives. And there was one common phrase I heard every single time, and mostly from the executives and cross-functional teams. Nothing ever moves in the payments team. And I said, why it doesn't move? And they gave me several examples of why things are not moving. And on the contrary, when I'm speaking, To the team members in engineering, to the product management team, they are under constant pressure. They said that, hey, the priorities are changing. We are under so much pressure to deliver things. We are delivering half-baked products. We don't know whether these products are successful or not. Every day there is a new company coming in and asking us for integration. So it's kind of becoming a mess. And more than that, this company was more led by a business say. Means we say business, which everyone is business. But ultimately they said the business team gives our roadmap. So they were kind of an order taker, not just from the business teams, finance teams, but also from the product managers itself. So the engineers were not that happy, which led to a lot of attrition in the organization. So the end goal was, how can we transform the payments team from just a back-end function to a driver of business and growth? Now, before I move ahead, I would like to just focus from a C-suite point of view that if I were a C-suite, how would I look into my business, and given an example of an e-commerce business. So I'll typically look into my P&L and say that, hey, my P&L is divided into two parts. I have a revenue side of the equation, and I have a cost side of the equation. Under the revenue side of the equation, typically in e-commerce, you will see something like a conversion, and then there are factors like cross-sell and upsell of services, ancillaries, so on and so forth. Call it different revenue lines of business. On the cost, different companies will see it different way. Some of the companies will say it's a CAPEX and an OPEX, which is like capital expenditure, and an operational expenditure. Some companies will call it like a fixed cost and a variable cost. However, if you go deep and try to understand, they are trying to just classify all the cost levers under different bucket. So some of the cost levers for an e-commerce company would be a payment cost, a fulfillment fees, a post-sales customer care cost. Means there are companies who have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 customer care people who are trying to resolve cases for the users. And then there are a lot of other cost factors. And then there are costs around marketing. So if you know, there's a whole bunch of cost that goes in acquiring users and retaining users from different channels. So one of the major costs any e-commerce company or an online company will have is around marketing and advertising cost. And then there are so many softwares and IT being used. So there are similar type of products, third-party products being used to serve different purposes. And then there are people cost. And then finally, there is a fixed cost about office, rentals, so on and so forth. Now, why I'm showing this slide to you today is that if you, as product managers, don't know how this works in your company, you won't be able to say good money stories. You won't be able to connect the work that you do to this side of the P&L. So next time you sit with your CFO, Felicity called it out, or someone from data analytics or finance teams, and try to build this chart. How does this look like for your company? In the next step, I will try and show you how do you connect this graph to your product area. Let's continue. Now, coming back to our story, this is kind of a transformation story. This is not a linear story, right? So we did 1, 2, 3, 4 things and everything changed. But what I'm trying to do is to walk you through some mindset shift that the company did, the teams did, that actually transformed the team from a feature-based team to more of a business and user value team. And at the same time, this transformation shift and the mindset shift that the teams did was in collaboration with the cross-functional teams with everyone in loop. The first shift is from siloed goals to shared ownership. One of the biggest challenge that I have seen in my career is that if you're working in a cross-functional team, the different teams have different goals. So for example, a finance team or a business team will say, I want to get more revenue, I want to reduce the cost, and so on and so forth. Product team wants to focus mainly on the user. Engineering team, reliability, get things done. And then there is user experience team who wants to focus more on the user experience, user side of things, and so on and so forth. However, if you go deep into asking these teams that what does it matter to them, you will find out that everyone is trying to solve the same problem, but nobody knows about it. Means a user experience team doesn't know what finance is trying to solve for. A finance team doesn't know what the product team is trying to solve for. And everyone wants to speak about, get my stuff done, get my stuff done. So the first thing that I did was to bring the teams together and do a workshop on what does common goal look like for this team. And when you think about this, think user and business. And this is what the teams arrived with. So the first one that you see here is seamless, error-free payment experience. Now, this one goal doesn't align just to the P&L, but it aligns to the user. If a transaction doesn't go through and your money is deducted, users panic. What happened? So if this doesn't happen, your transaction success rate is high, and at the same time, your user anxiety is low. Second, build trust in the payment system, which is you don't have frauds and chargebacks. Third, reduce payment-related customer contacts. Means if there is a payment failure, or if you don't know if you have canceled a transaction and you don't get your money back, you end up calling a customer care center. There's a customer care person sitting there, and every time a call reaches a customer care center, there's a cost that is involved in this. Optimize cost of payment. Every time you make a transaction, there is a fee that the payment gateway charges. So it makes sense that you want to reduce this cost and not at the expense of the user experience. So how do you balance this out in form of a trade-off? And last but not the least, the net promoter score. So if your users are not happy with the payment gateway, they will go ahead and give negative reviews in NPS comments, in different forums. And last but not the least, they will not come back to transact on your platform. So, shift number 2. Having goals is not enough. So you need to know whether you are actually moving towards your goals or not. And that is where numbers will help you. So the team sat together and they said that for every goal that we have, how do you come up with a set of numbers or a metric that tells whether we are moving towards our goals or not? So these were some of the metrics that the teams came through. And the teams went ahead and built dashboards for each of these metrics. Now what happens with the dashboard is actually that the numbers are not hidden anymore. Your goals are not hidden anymore. You can directly see these numbers on a dashboard. Everyone can have a look from the cross-functional team, and everyone can discuss these numbers. Now, I showed you a slide around how a C-suite will view this from the organization point of view. If I am a product manager or a product director trying to build a driver tree for my business, for my product area, this is how I will think. Now, for a payments product area, this is how it looks like. So you look into a top P&L statement. On one side is a revenue, where you talk about improving the payment success rate, reduce the decline rate for payment. And on the other side, there's a whole bunch of cost that is involved. So there's a PSP cost, there is a fraud chargeback cost, there's a customer care cost, there is a software cost, and then there's a whole bunch of manual operations goes in a payments team in order to reconcile the transactions, and that is where the manual operations actually cost a lot because there are a lot of people involved in this. Interesting thing is you look into the goals, you look into the success criteria, now you look into these drivers, all of these three align. As a product leader, this is the highest leveraged activity you can do for your teams. You can set the right goals, set the right metric, and align it to the P&L. So half of your job is done because you have set the right guardrails for the teams to operate on. Next, from opinions to business cases. We have set everything. Now, how do you make the team talk the language of business and users? And this is where your template comes in, the business case template. So the team introduced something called as a business case template, where everyone from any part of the cross-functional team can create a business case. So for example, you can write your hypothesis. You can write how does this idea align to your metric that we have decided, or the goals that we have decided. And then how much does it actually move the P&L at the same time? And finally, the trade-off. For example, means if you want to improve your success rate by crazy high, there will be a cost that you have to pay in terms of improved fraud cost as well. So the more you make the transactions go through, the more fraud that you see. So how do you balance this out is the trade-off cost here. And anyone was free to create a business case. And every week, the 30-minute meeting that the product managers and the cross-functional team had, there was an opportunity to view and review these business cases and refine the numbers from that, refine the confidence of the numbers that were put. What it did, it created transparency, encouraged data-driven thinking, and aligns team around shared priorities. Shift number 4. So when we start working around a product area, every time we think about growth. But when Semineta was presenting in the morning, she said that there are 4 levers that can actually help us talk business and numbers. And the 4 levers are, the first lever is increase revenue, protect revenue, reduce cost, protect means avoid a cost. Now the 4 buckets that you see here, we decided how do we actually take care of business cases that fall under each of those buckets. And last but not the least, not everything fit under the buckets of business case. So how do you put some time out so that you can justify that we are also improving on the technical side of the things, upgrading the platform. These were the 4 shifts. Now, none of these would matter if the results wouldn't have been visible. And these are some of the results that we got. Seamless error-free payment experience. We reduced or we increased the payment success rate from 61 to 73, which actually added 18 to 21 million of top line to the P&L. We reduced the cost of payment from 1.16% of the GMV to 0.96% of the GMV, which instantly saved 5.3 million USD in our cost. We reduced the call center cost around our contacts, which was earlier around 7% points from a share point of view, which reduced it to 4. We saved 210K in the P&L. And last but not the least, we improved the negative comments that we used to get from an NPS, which actually improved our NPS share for payments from 14 to 9, which actually improved our repeat rate and adding 600K to the top line revenue. All of this is fancy. The frameworks are fancy. This is the most filtered version of what I said, but it was not this easy to do that. So let's talk about where is the mess and how do we take trade-offs. And give me a moment for that. Now, what are some of the things I wish I knew before I started the journey? Frameworks fail under pressure, context wins. And I'll tell you a story what happened. So there was a new payment gateway or a new payment provider that came in back in India, and they were giving out cashbacks and discount for everyone who used that payment method in order to transact on the platform, when they transacted. When I went deeper and tried to understand that how does this payment method performing in our competitor platforms or wider platforms in the industry, the success rate was relatively low with the payment gateways that we already had on the platform. So what would a natural framework say? Your new payment method, low reliability, low success rate, let's not integrate. However, if you go deep and look into what was actually happening in the ecosystem, the customers loved this payment method, especially value-seeking customers and the Gen Zs. And the reason they loved it is because these were rolling out discounts. Pricing is the ultimate factor. So this was actually making the price of the transaction low, and they were happy with that. Second, all our competitors were slowly and steadily integrating this payment method in their journey. So if we would have not integrated this payment method, we would have lost out customers, and at the same time, we would have lost out from the competition. So there is a trade-off that we have to make. So we said that we'll go ahead and integrate this payment method, and we put checks and balances. So the first check that we put there was that we will do a limited rollout. And the second check that we put there, that every time a transaction fails, we will move the user back to show the next payment methods in the same journey. So this actually made us take that decision, integrate the payment method, and at the same time, save the transaction from going bad. Ultimately, the new payment method showed us a lift on our revenue. Second, the biggest lever is upskilling your team. So when you talk about data, there are few profiles or job roles which are very comfortable with data, right? So a product manager, few product managers will be very comfortable with data. Engineers will be very comfortable with data. Data analysts will be comfortable with data, and some people in the finance and business teams will be comfortable with data. However, there are a whole bunch of people who don't like numbers. So how do you build that democracy? And how do you educate the team so that everyone is at an equal footing to present business cases and have their idea considered in the review meetings? So we did 3 things for that. First, what we did, we introduced data analysts in the team. So for every time the review meetings that happened on every week, we saw there was a weak business case that were presented. We assigned a data analyst to the team, to the product manager or the person who presented the business case, which actually helped us go deeper and get the right numbers, call the right money story. Second, we created dashboards drilled to the least down so that anyone who wants to find numbers and go deep, they should be able to do it in pre-formatted dashboards, which actually made it easier for people to look into the numbers and build a business case. And third, we brought in upskilling programs. So we brought in SQL training programs, we brought in Tableau programs, which actually helped the teams upskill in the data. It took us some time. It took us 3 to 4 quarters to see the impact, but those are the things which really helped. Adapting to industry disruption. Now, you build good frameworks, you try to do the right thing, but then something changes outside in the industry. And this was exactly what happened in India in 2018. There were two industry disruptions that were changing the industry landscape in India. The first one was Jio, which is a mobile internet provider, and it was expanding widely in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Now, if you look into the geography of India like 7-8 years back, so the metros and tier 1 cities were the one who were the primary users of online channels. But then there is a new channel that is coming in, which is like tier 2 and tier 3 cities. There is a new set of user base that is coming in. How do you serve for those users? And there was a second phenomena, there was a new payment method that was being pushed by government. And this payment method was called UPI. And UPI is a primary mobile-based payment method. So imagine this scenario. On one side, you have mobile penetration going in. On one side, there is a payment method going in. So there were a few e-commerce companies in India. For example, one was Snapdeal, which was trying to cash into this opportunity. They said that, hey, we will go deeper into tier 2 and tier 3 cities and serve those users. So, and for us, it was like, how do we get the users on the platform? And primarily, if you see that tier 2 and tier 3 city users are a primary consumer of the trains product that we are selling on the platform. So we have to adapt again. We went ahead and integrated this in a phased manner, slowly and steadily, unlocking it for the verticals which we felt was the most useful for the user, and then we ramped it up. And to call it out, you saw there was a payment cost reduction from 1.16% to 0.96%. It was this initiative that reduced our cost of payment because the cost of payment for UPI was much lower than the other payment methods on the platform. And last but not the least, it's very underrated, but executive alignment is a constant job. Now, every time you're a product leader, you are on the face of executives. There are a lot of questions that will come. You are trying to set goals, you are trying to change things. Nobody likes change. How do you, in such a scenario, build the right narrative? What's going to happen? And that is where your money stories come in. And in the coming presentation, you will see how to say money stories in the coming workshop with Rich. But this is where your skill of understanding people comes in, your user empathy comes in, to understand what executives care about, what your cross-functional team cares about, and I believe no communication is over communication. So over-communicate, build the right narrative, and make the teams understand that why a decision has been taken and why something is not being done versus something being done. Finally, the real shift wasn't just in our metrics. It was how our teams thought about product, not as a backlog of features, but a system to drive business value. Thanks a lot.